The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So what's the headline from last night's Caps game? Is it goal number 900 for Alex Ovechkin? Or is it the goalie that tried to steal the puck by putting it in his pants? Yeah, that actually happened. We'll get to that. I also got breaking news on sports gambling. And I think what is an explosive story coming out of ESPN and their arrangement for ESPN Bet, that is no more. And I think there are a lot of layers on this that we should peel back. I will get to that. And also, it was 30 years ago today that the Cleveland Browns announced that they were moving to Baltimore. Fortunately for Browns fans, the name and the logo stayed behind. Fortunately for Baltimore, they got a team that was capable of winning a Super Bowl not that many years later. We'll get to all that coming up, but this is just breaking, so let me get to this. And I watch ESPN, SportsCenter, some. To be honest, usually when I'm waiting for PTI to come on, the last 5 minutes of SportsCenter, and in that last 5 minutes is when they have a quote-unquote betting analyst on. This is generally a very attractive woman. She's not known as a betting expert, just a betting analyst. And the analyst will give you a series of numbers, and she may say, well, I'm, prone to take the over, but there isn't really a lot of, hey, pound this. This is the way to go. No, this is just kind of soft peddling what has been called ESPN Bet, ESPN Bet brand, whatever it is. And now this story breaking within the last hour, ESPN and Penn Entertainment are terminating their sports betting partnership, bringing an end to the ESPN Bet brand on Penn Sportsbook years earlier than planned. How many years earlier than planned? How about 8? It was a 10-year deal. They're ending it after 2. It now will be known as Barstool Sportsbook. So I guess Penn Entertainment has gone back to, because this was a big deal that was done between Barstool and Penn some years ago, and Dave Portnoy walked away with a fortune in all of this. So it goes back to that. And according to reports, ESPN has now made a deal with DraftKings, and they will be a tab on the ESPN app. I mean, this is out of my area of expertise, so I'm just giving you things that are being reported. I can't really analyze this too well. I don't really bet. I have done betting ads, be honest, but I am not a big sports bettor. I've done it a few times when I've gone to Vegas, but I don't do it on my phone. And the latest is that ESPN will run this show that will be hosted by DraftKings. And I don't know anything here, just what I see on the surface is ESPN wanting to run away from, I guess, telling people to bet is how I would put it. So this insulates them with a DraftKings show. And with the what Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier are facing, and I'm told it's going to be prison term possibly for Chauncey Billups, and Rozier may have been involved in point shaving, which is just the most awful thing you can do. To make the games in doubt and wonder for the fans whether this is real or whether this is now being fixed. And Jimmy Pitaro, who is the chairman of ESPN, said the company is now pursuing other media and marketing opportunities. Well, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a DraftKings show on ESPN. And where this goes, who knows? But I think that this slope gets slipperier and slipperier for places like ESPN, because they are televising games. They're putting on NBA product, and they're going to tell the fans this is legit. This wasn't fixed. And so if you're running your own bet operation there, that just has an icky feel to it, at least to me. I mean, I may be off base here, but this is just my read on this. And so by turning this over to DraftKings, that becomes the DraftKings show that happens to be run on ESPN, and DraftKings will be part of the ESPN app. Now, there's also this Fanatics Sportsbook, this guy who started the apparel company where you can order your favorite jersey and get it in a day. And it's very, very successful, and he's branched out into a sports betting. I think this is probably going to hurt them, I would think. I don't think that people are going to go out of their way to do that. But again, I just don't know. But that's what has broken this morning, that all that stuff that you heard about ESPN Bet and Scott Van Pelt, who includes betting in part of his show, that's been part of what he has done for a long time. He was all part of that advertising campaign for ESPN Bet. That all goes away, and I think they would like to isolate people like Van Pelt, who is in many ways a journalist. I don't think you could necessarily say he's a reporter, but he does engage in facts and interviews and things that involve breaking news and so forth. So there's got to be a credibility to it, and to separate him, I think, from a brand that is ESPN and betting, I think was a big part of the picture here. All right, last night, Capitals at home. Alex Ovechkin has been struggling to score goals this year, just 2 of them through 12 games. That all changed in the second period.
And now as Beauvillier and Ovechkin will team up. And a puck behind the net. Binnington looking to play it, and he gave it away to Ovechkin. The puck centered up here for Chikrin to drive, and a puck that is in a score! And it's 900 goals for Alexander Ovechkin! The 900 Club has its first member! The odometer turns over and the bench empties, and Alex Ovechkin has done it. The first player in National Hockey League history to 900 goals.
Outstanding. What a, no doubt he goes right there, gets a nice little rebound, a little backhand shot, puts it behind. Alex Ovechkin, again, another milestone, and sticks are going over there, all gloves, everything's going to go over there. It's amazing. He just continues to do it.
Against Jordan Binnington, 2:39 into the second period. Alex Ovechkin, the first player in NHL history to 900 goals. It is a number you never thought we would see. But we saw 895 in April. And here tonight on this 5th of November, 2025, the National Hockey League has its first 900 goal member. And that's Alex Ovechkin.
That is John Walton on the Caps radio network. So while this celebration that they described is going on one end of the ice, they're throwing sticks, they're throwing gloves, they're hugging Ovi, the whole deal. Guess what's going on at the other end of the ice with the Blues goalie who gave up the goal, Jordan Binnington.
Watch what he does with the puck. He's going to keep it in his pants. I don't know if he wants to sell it on the open market or not, but they're not going to get that puck from Binnington. But that is until linesman Michel Cormier came over and said, hey, we know you got the puck, buddy.
Good job catching that. There's cameras everywhere, guys.
Tremendous.
His eBay account would have been popping off after this game had he pulled that heist off.
Yeah, well, how is he going to do it? Did he really think that there was so much of a distraction going on with the Ovechkin goal celebration that he could take the puck, which I don't know what it's worth, maybe it's worth $100,000, just slip it into his pants, nobody would notice, and after the game, hey, whatever happened to the 900 puck? Ovechkin would like to have that. He collects all these things. I don't know whether eventually they'll go into some type of museum, but yeah, he's big on collecting stuff, and he wanted that puck for sure. And Binnington thought he would get away with it. It's like the guys who stole that stuff from the Louvre. Where are they going to fence it? People know what that stuff looks like. You walk into a pawn shop. Hey, would you like to buy these jewels here? Oh, those look like jewels from the Louvre. So here's going to be Binnington, who's got the puck and is going to try and sell it. Well, of course, he put it in his pants. I mean, that's just really remarkable. And he was pulled from the game. He gave up 4 of the 6 goals on 15 shots and pulled not that long after that, 9:28 of the second period, did not speak to reporters after the game. Yeah, somebody's got to ask him, what were you thinking? You put the puck in your pants and you thought you were going to get away with it? What kind of an idiot are you? So Ovechkin's got 900. So whatever that number means. The big one was when he passed Wayne Gretzky when he got to 895. Everything else is gravy at this point. And how many he retires with remains to be seen. He's in the last year of his contract. He has kind of hinted that this may not be it. From what I've been told, the Capitals would kind of like it for it to be it. But at least he got past that milestone number, not sitting on it for a whole lot longer time. We'll talk more about the Commanders, a lot about the injury stuff, and they still have not made a decision on Jayden Daniels. He's got that dislocated elbow, but they haven't done a full analysis to say whether he's going to. I don't think he's going to need surgery, from what I've heard. Like, there was no fracture. And there is the possibility that he will play again this year, but they haven't really made a decision on that. And more importantly, they have not yet put him on injured reserve. So theoretically, not going to happen, but theoretically, he could play this week. And we'll get to what Kurt Warner said yesterday on the Rich Eisen show about playing with that injury. And I remember seeing him play against the Redskins with that injury in 2007. But in the meantime, you got 9 guys missing practice yesterday. I mean, it has just been an incredibly bad year for injuries. And not only has that depleted them on the field, but the overall malaise of the injuries over the team. This is Dan Quinn's take on that.
It's definitely a big one. It's also for the guys that are out, some that are out that'll come back, some that are out for the season. And the ones that I worry about are the ones out for the season. As far as the mental toll collectively, team, like everybody goes through it, and some stuff, not injuries, but I'm saying hard things, and you find your way and you adapt. But it's better to acknowledge it, talk about it, and find the best plan moving forward. And if you have, the right mindset to go solve the problems, then, okay, this is what we need to go do, and this is how we need to go do it. I think just being straight about it, John, is the best approach. To eliminate any doubt, this is how we're going to go win, and each game is winnable, and you have to say this is how we're going to go do it for this game. And that may look different week to week, but for us, that's where the focus goes, and I try to explain that in the beginning of the week, and then you try to make that come to life through the game plan and the practice. And so having a whole week to go do that against a talented Detroit team, like, we'll need the whole week in the practice to do that.
Next man up, of course, as I say, 9 missing practice yesterday. Quan Martin and fellow safety Tyler Owens not on the field. I'm barely familiar with Tyler Owens. He's another injury replacement. Then you got Trey Amos, the rookie, who's played pretty decently, but he missed with a hip problem yesterday. Tight end Colson Yankoff, who's big on special teams, out with a hamstring. Defensive lineman Eddie Goldman, concussion. Jerzon Newton, or Johnny Newton, ankle injury, limited in practice, as was Bill Krosky-Merritt, though it was because he'd had some dental work done. So that's not going to keep him out. But and I got to wonder about his future with the team, too. After a great start, he has truly cooled off. Now, whether that's the blocking schemes, whether that's teams getting wise to what he likes to do and containing him, who knows? But he has not been the factor that they had hoped he would be consistently after what he showed in the first few weeks of the season. Lions have their own injury problems, starting offensive tackle Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell among 5 who did not practice yesterday. And it's, that time of year. The Commanders still have 2 more games until the bye week, and it's tough sledding. So you got a team that's 3-6. You got a quarterback who may or may not play for the rest of the year. On top of that, you've got one of the worst injury situations in the league. And, you're looking long-term for a team that is, well, it's old now, but once they start to shed some of these plug-in veterans that they've had for the last year or so, year and a half, that this will be a team looking to move forward with a young quarterback and Jayden Daniels and a bright future ahead of him. So this is Quinn on balancing what they've got with this devastating injury situation and a team that's pretty close to being out of it at 3-6, and what the game plan is at this point.
Win now, but develop for tomorrow. And I think you can have both buckets if you're organized and thoughtful in how you're developing players. We know some first and second year guys, there's going to be more bumps in the road than just a veteran who's played lots and lots and lots. That's to be expected, but you can do both. And that's our approach here to make sure we're I love on the first and second year guys, some of the developments that they're making. It goes sometimes this and then this, and like, man, it'd be awesome if it just kept going up, but that's not how like development works. So I think the balance of both is important, but I think you can have two buckets, and I think you can do both simultaneously. Some shift based on opponent, where you're at, but I think you can do both.
Well, one bucket may be filled with vomit for a season that had so much promise and is now at 3-6. And realistically, where can this team go this season if you're going to have Jayden Daniels miss a minimum of 4 games? And I think what we've seen from Marcus Mariota is sometimes he can be very good. He's definitely a competent backup. And if he has all the parts around him, he may be able to win games. But he's now a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest with a roster that's just falling apart around him. He's not going to have Terry McLaurin again this week. It looks like Noah Brown, his season is lost. I don't even know if he's eligible to come off the injured list this week. I don't think he is. And even Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz missed practice yesterday it was a rest day for him. But I think we're seeing the end of Zach Ertz. I think that's clearly becoming an issue. He's had multiple penalties, a couple of offsides. He's old. And Bobby Wagner, same thing. He's become a liability in the pass game. Teams are trying to isolate the old linebacker in the middle, and he just can't keep up. So, the question is, what's left for the season? They're not going to tank. I know fans oh, stop winning games so you get a draft pick. No, they'll win some games. They've got 8 left to go, so I would expect them to win 3, maybe 4 of them. But the reality of competing and trying to get back to the playoffs with this roster that may not even have Jayden Daniels available at the end of the season, I think you're probably looking to next year at this point. Meantime, 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks weighed in on this yesterday, the Jayden Daniels elbow situation, which is, as you know, to his non-throwing elbow. And the question is, can he play? And the second question is, should he play? We'll hear from both Kurt Warner and Steve Young as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
It would probably be insane to put Jayden Daniels out there with a dislocated elbow, but it's the left elbow, and it's the NFL, and they only play 17 of these games. And if the team were 6-3 instead of 3-6, what would they do? Kurt Warner has some actual experience with this, and I do remember seeing him play with this injury. He called into Rich Eisen's show yesterday to say this.
I had the exact same thing happen to me back in 2007 to my off arm, dislocated the elbow, all the things that Jayden is going through. I don't know what his timetable is going to be. I knew at that time in my career, I'd been benched numerous times, and it was actually my second game. Matt Leinart got hurt. My first game as a starter after Matt got hurt I hurt my elbow, and I'm just thinking, really, finally get a chance to get back on the field, and this happens. But I actually played the next week. We put a brace on my left arm, to kind of immobilize it to a degree. I ended up handing off. Every handoff with my right hand. If you guys remember when I was doing it backwards. So I came out the next day and I'm like, okay, if I can hand it off with this other hand and I can, manage the pain with that, ended up playing the rest of the season with that. So, just a different perspective. I've heard a lot of people say, it may be, long-term for before Jayden gets back. But it is something that I think you can play through if you can manage the pain. If the team's in a position where you feel like you need him out there and you've got something to push for. It was interesting when I saw it. Didn't want to look at it, just like I don't like to look at mine. Big Julius Peppers ended up jumping on my elbow, and that's what made it go the wrong direction, as you can imagine. But I was able to come back in the short term and play through it.
2 follow-ups on that. One is, I guess, a perfect point that you mentioned. You're towards the back end of your career. And you were looking for that opportunity, and you're like, to heck with this. If I can brace it up and I can hand it off like that, I'm going to do it. This is a year 2 kid, right? Unicorn, they're 3-6. So I wouldn't be surprised if they just sat him out. Kurt, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, no question about it, and especially because the season hasn't started the way they wanted it to. But, even more so for me, and I think most of these guys that play, it wasn't really just, well, this is my chance again. But as a player and a competitor, you're like, well, can it get worse? And the doctors told me, no, it can't really get worse. And can you manage the pain? Well, okay, we can manage the pain. All right. So you play. I mean, that's part of this business. There's guys out there every Sunday that we probably don't even know about that are playing through some kind of injury and some kind of pain. And that's just the mentality of the players. If I can be out there and I can be helping my team and I can be out there playing and competing, I'm going to do that. So, yeah, of course, it's different if you feel, for whatever reason, this could have a detrimental effect on Jayden Daniels moving forward. Then, of course, you hold him out as long as you have to because he is the future of that franchise. But, if it's similar to my situation where it's like not going to get any worse, there's not anything we can really do about it. We just kind of got to let it heal. Hey, we can brace it up and maybe shoot it up a little bit and go play some ball.
I remember seeing Kurt Warner play with that dislocated elbow against the Redskins. I looked this up. This was October 21st, 2007. They played at FedEx Field. The Redskins actually beat the Cardinals 21-19. Warner's numbers are pretty decent. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he threw for 282 yards and 2 touchdowns, was 27 of 41. But here's the thing. He was 36 years old. He was on his 3rd team. Things had flamed out for him in St. Louis, where he was an unbelievable instant success. That amazing season of 1999, greatest show on turf. The Rams win the Super Bowl. They go back the following year, and then injuries start to catch up with him. He winds up in New York in 2004 as Eli Manning's kind of rabbit. Like, they had drafted Eli Manning or made the trade to get him from San Diego after he decided he wasn't going to play, or his dad decided he wasn't going to play for the Chargers. So they made the deal. Phillip Rivers goes to the Chargers. Manning winds up in New York, but doesn't start right away. Things were a little bit different in 2004. So they got the old wily vet, Kurt Warner. He's won before. Let him show the way. And then midseason they bench him and they put in Eli. And then he's cut after the season, winds up in Arizona. Same thing. He's supposed to be the rabbit for Matt Leinart. Matt Leinart turns out to be not very good. And so he gets hurt, of course, as you heard Warner say. Warner himself gets hurt, plays with that dislocated elbow. Now, the only thing that was really different for him, and he was 36 at the time, so he wasn't, like Jayden Daniels. His future was pretty much behind him, though I'll get to that in a moment. The handoff that he had to make to a running back coming up on his right had to be backhanded. That was the only difference. The handoffs that he would make to the running back coming up on his left, he could hand off the usual way. That seemed to be the only thing that hindered him. And I remember seeing the game, and I didn't think that it was that big a deal. Now, he wasn't the runner that Jayden Daniels is, and again, not the same age. But here's the thing. After that season, playing with the dislocated elbow, where he made 11 starts, he was 5-6. His overall numbers not too bad. Threw for 3,400 yards, 27 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. The next year, he took Arizona to the Super Bowl, where they hadn't been before and haven't been since. And his season was remarkable. So, if it took something out of him playing with the dislocated elbow, it sure didn't look like it the next year. He played one more year and retired, but by that point he was 38 years old, and now he's in the Hall of Fame. So that's the view from Kurt Warner. Steve Young, also a Hall of Famer, never played with the dislocated elbow, but when he was on PTI last night, he gave you a view of just how the NFL views an injury like this.
So you think not that much, right? I mean, even if it's wrapped up and you can't move it, it's not that big of a deal. But we're talking about 99th percentile stuff, like 100th percentile. Like, every little thing keeps you from being that perfect anticipatory thrower that can fit it into hole. Like, your body needs to be whole. Now, if you're right-handed, your left arm have to be completely whole? No, but you don't realize. Ask Brock Purdy about a big toe. I mean, my gosh, he can. It affects his throwing in a big way. But to me, your other arm, you think it's not that big a deal, but if somehow it's not counterbalancing the right way, and you got to be perfect with the football, it makes it super tough.
Then, Professor, follow up. From what you've seen, would you just say at 3-6 record for the Commanders, okay, Jayden, it's been enough. It's been enough. Let's get you whole again. Am I going too far?
I think you have to in some ways, Michael. I don't think the problem is we started this idea that we're going to, kind of tank the season, right? For draft picks. Started in basketball and now it's infected football and it starts to the theme going. And the truth is it's not necessarily tanky. It's like, you gotta be smart. Jayden's going to be around for 15, 20 years. You want him to be that guy. You got to make sure that you do everything you can to make sure that now you got to play him. It's football. But if he's not completely healthy, to me, honestly, I would not just say end the season. Go get healthy. If it's week 15 and you're healthy and ready to go and you want to come inspire the troops, I'm up for that. I'm a quarterback that says I play. If I'm healthy, I play. Don't talk to me about management, clock management, time management, load management. Like I don't, in football, I guess leave that to people who are off the field and can try to be smart about it. If you're a player, get on the field. Bill Walsh always used to say, if you're not in the huddle, you're not in the huddle. And that was not a good thing. So I think that, if I were Jayden, I would get healthy and just demand to get on the field. Just love playing.
So that's two Hall of Fame quarterbacks, one who played with this injury, Kurt Warner, the other, Steve Young, who had to sit behind Joe Montana for 3 years in San Francisco before the team finally became his. And they're both saying, play. And that may seem absolutely insane to mere mortals like you and I. I never played in the NFL. I don't know if you did, but these two guys did. And they understand the mentality. Now, in the case of Young, he's been out since 99. 10 years later, Kurt Warner retired. So they've both been out a significant period of time. I don't know how much the NFL has changed, but being around football players my whole life, I've worked many years with Joe Jacoby and Monty Coleman and did work with Darryl Green and, got to know a number of ex-players. This is how they think. This is a different mindset than you and I have. And you will see guys get out on the field with injuries that would have most of us in bed for a couple of weeks. I've never had a broken rib, but I am told those are incredibly painful injuries. Well, we saw Jayden play with one last year, and we didn't even know about it. He threw the Hail Mary pass with a broken rib. Back in the day, before they invented the flak jacket, Sonny Jurgensen tried to play in a game, I think 1968, might have been a road game, and he had some kind of a contraption that was metal that was going to go around his midsection to protect broken ribs, and got hit a couple of times, and it got dented, and he had to leave the game. Now, in 1978, the Houston Oilers had Dan Pastorini, and this is a great story. This is part of the history of kind of rib injuries in the NFL, where you would either gut it out or you'd have to sit out, and he wasn't going to sit out in 1978 because this was a magical season for the Houston Oilers. They had Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell was the best player in the league. He was an unstoppable running back. And for a team that had not had much success in a long period of time, they were a lot of fun. They were the Love You Blue Oilers. And so when Pastorini broke his rib and was in the hospital, a guy walks in with some new contraption, and he's got a friend with him. The guy puts on the contraption around his midsection. The guy pulls out a baseball bat. And Pastorini goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. He says, let me show you something. He whacks the guy in the ribs with the flak jacket, and he doesn't even flinch. And so that convinces Pastorini to start to play with the flak jacket, which he did. And he completed that season, and they had a magical year. They went to the AFC Championship game before losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you would think, oh, my God, broken ribs, how can you play? Well, they shoot it up, you get out there, and you play. And, yes, you could say that in 1978, the Oilers were trying to get to a Super Bowl. Well, theoretically, Washington is trying to get to a Super Bowl. 3-6 is a difficult obstacle to overcome, but not impossible. And crazier things have happened in the NFL. And if, they can win some games with Marcus Mariota, if they can get to the point, and we still have 2 months of the season left to go. So let's say he sits out this week against Detroit, sits out next week where they go to Barcelona to play Miami, and then they have the bye week. Well, that's 3 full weeks to get ready. Does he possibly play in that night game against the Denver Broncos? He might. He might. I would not rule it out, especially if they win the next two. I think this game is really pivotal for the season. I don't know if you necessarily throw in the towel at 3-7, but it's probably unrealistic to do it if you think if you're looking towards playoffs. But I listen to what both those guys say, and it fits right in with everything I've learned talking to NFL players over the years, that if you can walk, you can play. And as they often say, there's a big difference between pain and injury. And yes, this is an injury, but as Kurt Warner told you, it's not a debilitating injury. You can play with that, as he did, making, I guess he said he got hurt in his first start. So he made 10 starts with a dislocated elbow. Finished the season with pretty good numbers. Following year, took a team that nobody expected to get there to the Super Bowl. So crazy stuff. And just the mentality of football players is just so much different than it is for the rest of us. A little cleanup on the World Series. Dave Roberts, manager of the Dodgers, was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. I want to play a couple quick things that he said. One, and there are just so many things that happened. I actually was at an event last night, and Tim Kirchin was there, and he's a great speaker, tells unbelievable stories of covering baseball for almost 50 years. And I've known him a long time, and he's a wonderful guy, wonderful reporter. And he said that this was the best of the 44 World Series he'd ever covered. And he also said that Game 7 was the most amazing game that he'd ever seen. He said you saw things in that game which you may never see again, and he hadn't seen before all his years of covering baseball, including the Andy Pegues catch where he looked at Kike Hernandez, who was trying to make a Willie Mays catch pretty much up against the wall, and Pegues, who had just come in the game as a defensive replacement, just come in, says, oh, my God, I don't think he's going to catch that, jumps over him to make the catch, and this was the view that Dave Roberts had of it from the dugout.
It's unbelievable. They both went after it. Kike was trying to make his Willie Mays play. Pages was just inserted and just made a next-level big moment play. And it's funny because Kike laid down there for dead, and Pages asked him if he was okay, and he says, forget that. Do you have the ball? And he said, yes, I do have the ball. And he got up and ran into the dugout. So it was, but again, and it's like Miguel Rojas coming out of Game 7 because he just expended all energy. It's like, that's just what fans live for, and that's what our players gave both teams.
Yeah, it was remarkable. And on that play, I can understand it from Hernandez's point of view, is that he believes if he doesn't catch the ball, the game's over, right? And it is. That would have ended the game if the catch was not made. And so he's lying there wondering in that few seconds, is my season over, or do we still have a chance to win the World Series? And as it turned out, the catch was made. The Willie Mays catch, to me, 1954, although I didn't see it live, obviously wasn't born yet, but I've seen it many times on film. That, to me, is the signature catch of the World Series. That will be something that will always be remembered. In fact, David Israel, who's a longtime columnist for a number of papers, including the Washington Star, and then transitioned to be a Hollywood producer. I follow him on Facebook. He has said that should be the logo for Major League Baseball. It's kind of cool. The logo would be Mays with his back to you, number 24, and the ball about to land at his mitt over his head. That, to me, will always be the signature World Series catch. It was in Game 1, though, not Game 7. This one, Game 7, it certainly will be remembered. Now, the Dodgers have something on their racket right now, which I don't think has been done since I should look this up. It might not be since the A's of the early 70s. I don't think the Yankees won 3 straight. They may have. I know they won 4 out of 5. I have to look this up, but it's either the Yankees at the end of the 90s or the A's in the early 70s. But the chance to three-peat, which is now open to them, and Roberts is not running away from that idea.
We already talked about the players. Already talked about a three-peat. I talked about a three-peat. So I'm not making any guarantees, but I already cleared it with Pat Riley on the three-peat term. So we're excited. I just think with us, you got to find some carrot. It's like we started out in South Korea in 24, finished in the Bronx, started out in Tokyo, finished in Canada. And so we've had the longest season, the shortest off seasons of anyone, traveled the most miles. So you've got to have some carrot to keep our guys focused and motivated. So the three-peat is it for us.
Yeah. I mean, you want to win, you expect to win.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Well, they're the best organization in sports. And you could say they spend the most money, but the Mets spent a hell of a lot of money and didn't even make the playoffs. So Dodgers certainly in play to three-peat. And in sports, that is so hard to do. The amount of energy expended to get to where you get to, it's already November. For most of us, we don't have that kind of vacation, a 3-month vacation. But at the end of 3 months, when the spring training starts to open up in February, you got to look around and go, whoa, weren't the Dodgers just playing yesterday? And that's what you have to overcome. And the hunger to get back and do that. And there's a lot of luck involved. Look, all the crazy things that happened on their way. But you got to also remember what they did in the NLCS. They basically whitewashed the Brewers. The Brewers were the best hitting team in baseball this year. Whitewashed them. Took them down. So, that's baseball, as John Sterling used to say to Susan Waldman. Coming up, Dan Quinn, rarely critical of players, his own players. Not necessarily critical, but an analysis of the secondary, which has a tone that I hadn't heard from him in the year and a half he's been here. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
30 years ago today, the Browns announced a move to Baltimore in what turned out to be a very smart move by the NFL. They said, okay, you can move, but the name and the logo stay behind. And the Cleveland Browns have been resuscitated, such as they are. They've been a pretty miserable team since coming back as an expansion team in 1999. But at least the city has a team, and Baltimore has a team that should have been named the Colts. Instead, it's the Ravens, but they've got 2 Super Bowl championships since they moved from Cleveland. We'll get to that in about an hour. Meantime, I'm not breaking any news here, but the defense for the Commanders stinks. It's terrible. And Joe Witt, who's the defensive coordinator, is due to talk to the media today. They're going to move him from the press box down to the field. Okay, let's see what that does. I don't think it's going to have a big impact. As is pointed out in the Post today, the Commanders are 19th in pressure rate and sack rate. And with defensive ends Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste on injured reserve, the edge rush position is in a dire state. Frankie Louvu has picked up some more edge rushing snaps to make the difference, but the results haven't really proven anything there. Louvu, by the way, I'm sure you know this, but his suspension was overturned, so he's going to be on the field on Sunday. They brought in Von Miller, one of those push us over the line veterans. He's been okay as a pass rusher, so is Jacob Martin, but they're susceptible to runs, which is very typical of guys who just pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. Washington is 19th in yards per carry allowed. And then when you get to the back end, Bobby Wagner is old. He struggles now in pass defense. Safeties Quan Martin and Jeremy Reeves, who's was thought to be just a special teams guy this year, has had to play a lot because Will Harris is on the injured list with a broken leg. Who knows when he comes back? They've given up some big plays. It's a bad situation. And then you got Mikey Sanderstill, who had a great rookie year, very worthy of being a second-round pick by the Commanders out of Michigan. But he's given up some big plays this year. He does have I think does he have 2 interceptions? At least 1 interception that comes to mind. I think he's got 2. But he's also feast or famine. And Dan Quinn, who goes out of his way, it's kind of what Joe Gibbs used to do. Bill Parcells would criticize players. Jimmy Johnson would do it. Certain coaches will sometimes get to players through the media. Quinn doesn't do that. Joe Gibbs never did that. But this is about as critical as you will hear him get as he analyzes the play so far of Mikey Sanderstill.
Yeah, I would say there's been up and down moments, meaning the playmaker, the interceptions I saw at L.A. and the last couple of weeks. So the ball hawking mindset, which I love. There's also been a couple of plays of over trying, to make those plays, and that's that's kind of part of the process. You don't like to go through that, but when you're capable of making plays, well, I'll make some more, and I'll make a few more. And then all of a sudden, that's not the one that you need to take a chance on. In the basketball world, I'm not going to force this shot. That's what sometimes happens to a ball player who has the skills to go do that. And I think there's been some examples of that this year. And I'm not surprised because he's a competitor and wants to help and make plays. And so part of my training with the guys and talking to them, I want them to feel backs against the wall and fight for that. But I don't want them to try to make things up to go try to win. Like the attitude, the mindset, that's good, but not at the expense of veering off course to do something that could have other consequences. And he has to learn that, I would say, but he's not alone in that. That's, everybody, when you're fight like hell, you want to make a play for the team, you want to change the course of things, and so it's actually when you need to be the most disciplined. And those are good, hard lessons, but ones that I'm certain that he's learning too.
What does he have to lean into as a second-year player who has this? It's a natural kind of progression. There's tape on you now. There's ways to attack you now. And what does he have to lean into to kind of get through those rough patches when it doesn't go the way he would like it to go?
Yeah, I think you have to lean into the discipline and the technique, because when you play with that and you have that and you can lean on that, man, then you're good, David, because now I know I can play the technique and play it when you're maybe I'm off, I'm back, I want to take a shot, then you're not out of the technique. So I think there's like a real discipline that has to take place. And as you're going through, sometimes I feel like he's older than going into the second year, but some of those players that have more years, okay, that's not the time. That's not the place to go take your shot. He's still learning that. And I know that he'll learn from this. A sharp guy, but we can't have ones where you can and where you can't. So the discipline, I would say, is the biggest factor for a ball player who's a playmaker, because they know they can make the next one and make the next one. And so I imagine that's much the same conversation, which the right shot when you've covered that. So it's for the guys that aren't capable of making some of those, they are probably more disciplined in sometimes, because I can't make that play all the way over there, where sometimes a player thinks they can.
Two-part playing off that. Is it expected then that you're seeing it in year two more so than year one with him, and then just with him and Quinn together, just the two together, how do you feel like they're developing after a really strong first year together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And they're both going through it too, they want it to be right and good. Like, these are two really committed guys. And so, going for Quinn, like whether it's a tackling, that didn't go the way that you want, like, and he's somebody that I have all the faith in to get those done. But when you miss him, you want to talk about him, acknowledge him, and say, this is what needs to be done to go make this play, get this technique done. And sometimes over-trying can be that way. I want to do this, and I thought he was going to do that, and no, man, just trust the technique. And so I've sensed with both of them some of that, and they're two guys that I just believe in so much, and to stay in the discipline of it, and those plays will generally be made.
So what he's telling, and he's probably directing this at them, Jimmy Johnson was the master of this, using the media to get to his players. Quinn, I don't think works that way, but something caused him to, I think, talk more in this way than I've heard him in the past. And he's saying, don't be a hero. If you think you can make the play, doesn't mean you can necessarily make it. We were just talking about the World Series catch. If Pages, I think it's Pages or Pages, I think it's Pages. If he misses on that, and you've got a whole off season of should have let Kike Hernandez make the catch. He made the catch, but that's the part of a crazy game where we saw a lot of once in a lifetime type of plays. In the course of a long football game where there are a lot of plays, maybe what he's telling you is because, and it could be partly because of all the injuries. Here's Mikey Sanchez still trying to be Deion Sanders or trying to be somebody he's not, and it's hurting him. That's pretty clear from what he's saying. Is that the biggest problem on the defense? No. I mean, everything works, as Marty Schottenheimer used to say, in concert. So you got a compromised pass rush. You got some of your best rushers out for the season, like, Dorrance Armstrong is out for the year. Dietrich Wise, they're gone. Bobby Wagner's not what he was. You're having to play a linebacker in Frankie Louvu as an edge rusher, and it's just not working out. And so when you don't have the pressure up front, then your secondary, is under pressure all the time because the quarterback has plenty of time to get the throw off. And we've had it in reverse here. I remember a year, I think it was 96, and they had I forget the name of the other corner. He'd come over from Houston, but he was playing with Darryl Green, who had something left in the tank. Darryl Green, Hall of Fame corner, played 20 years here and played at a remarkable level into his late 30s. And Chris Dishman, that was the guy. It was Green and Dishman, and they were playing so well as a tandem in the secondary that they were getting some big pressure up front, and there was a bunch of sacks that they were able to accumulate, and so that helped the defensive front, and the secondary was that good. In this case, you got a secondary that's young, and they're trying to make hero plays, and you don't have any pressure up front. There's just not enough of it. So there's a lot of things with this defense, and I'll be interested to hear what Joe Witt has today to say at his weekly news conference as he makes the big move down from the press box to the field for Sunday's game against the Lions. Coming up, more in the Commanders game this week, and 30 years ago today, the Browns said, we're moving to Baltimore. It's the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630. As Bella Caroli once said, you can do it, Kerry, you can do it. Well, Kerry Strug did it. Can the Commanders do it? Can they overcome all these injuries and somehow make the playoffs? Doesn't look good right now. Doesn't look good at all, but you'll hear Marcus Mariota have a very optimistic outlook on that. I mean, what else is he supposed to do? So we'll get to that. Also, interesting thing from Mel Kiper on quarterbacks who just landed with the wrong team, that if they'd go to the right organization, their careers might have turned out differently than they did. So we'll get to that and much more in the next hour, including the Browns' announcement that they were going to Baltimore 30 years ago, and how Art Modell was just vilified for that. He basically couldn't go back to Cleveland. I remember being at the Hall of Fame ceremony a year later when Joe Gibbs went in 1996, and there were signs from Browns fans, just crushing Art Modell. I'm trying to think. I don't think there was a Browns player that went in that year, but the hatred for Modell, and Cleveland was only an hour away from Canton, was really palpable, and we'll relive some of that coming up later. Anyway, as I mentioned, Marcus Mariota, he'll be the starting quarterback, though they did not make it official. They still have not put Jayden Daniels on injured reserve with the dislocated elbow, and theoretically he could start this week. There have been quarterbacks who have played with an injury like this, as Kurt Warner said he did. And I remember this in 2007 when he played most of the season with his left arm in a brace and managed to do okay. I don't think that's something they necessarily want to do with Jayden Daniels, but that is an option. But it looks pretty certain that Marcus Mariota will get the start against Detroit. And as he said yesterday,
absolutely. And it starts up top with DQ. He sets the mood every day. Guys follow that, and I do believe that. And again, it's not going to all happen at once. We understand that. Being out here, taking it one day at a time, getting things corrected, getting things organized, making sure everyone's on the same page so that when we do get to Sunday, guys are feeling confident and ready to go.
I don't know how confident they feel, but you got to say that also. Like Dan Quinn talked about his cornerbacks trying to do too much, Quan Martin and Mikey Santrosill. Mariota saying really the same thing about the offense. Don't try to be a hero.
Well, I think it's a sense of urgency, but understanding that just do your part. You don't got to put the Superman cape on. I think that's kind of what is communicated throughout the building. And at the same time, it's one of those things, you just got to fight and claw. And I believe in the guys in here that they'll do that, and we'll be where we want to be.
one thing they got the other day, which is, it's a help. Frankie Louvu is going to play. Now, it appears to me that the NFL has changed the way appeals work, because it used to be like, the old Andy Griffith show, that Andy was everything in Mayberry. He was the sheriff. He was the justice of the peace. Every duty that was imaginable, Andy Griffith, Sheriff Andy Taylor performed. And that's kind of the way it worked in the NFL. Roger Goodell would issue the punishment, and then if you wanted to appeal, you went to Roger Goodell. Well, Derek Brooks, who is a great player, Hall of Fame player with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is now on that committee, heading up that committee on appeal. And I believe Louvu, a linebacker, benefited from that, because the initial word was, yep, you violated the hip drop tackle rule too many times, even though you didn't get flagged for it on the Sunday night game. There was a fine for that and a suspension, and you're going to have to sit out a game, which would have cost him $500,000 in salary. The suspension has been overturned. He has been cleared to play. He's going to pay a $100,000 fine, but it's a lot better than the alternative. And yesterday he talked at length about where he is in the league and maybe being targeted by the league because of this. I wonder, he didn't say this, but I wonder if he drew too much attention to himself last year in the NFC Championship game on that tush-push thing where he kept jumping over the pile. And, like, the NFL was like, hey, wise guy. Now, it was ordered by Dan Quinn and the defensive staff. But still, hey, you're kind of making a mockery of that. So we're going to have an extra lookout for you. But anyway, they did overturn the suspension, and Louvu yesterday very grateful for that.
Just a relief, you know what I mean? Weight off my shoulders. I always trying to play the game the right way. That's how, when I stepped into the league, Coach Kevin Green taught me how to play the game. I know the rule has changed drastically over the years, but, I'm just, all my intentions, man, I ain't never trying to step out on the field and trying to hurt somebody. That's never my intentions. And, I'm not the person where I'm like, I wake up on Sunday mornings like, man, I can't wait to go out there and hurt somebody. That's far from what, my intentions are, man. I respect my peers. I respect my players. I respect the game and what it's done for me, and also, like, my reputation, you know what I mean? Like, 8th year in the league, man, it's a blessing. It's a milestone for me, and, I just try to do the right thing the right way, you know what I mean? And, I try to approach the game violently. That's how I play the game. I play it aggressive, violently, and, what we preach here is, is as a defense, man, we want people aggressive, violently, and also doing the right thing, and not going out there and, hurting somebody. And, I'm just happy everything played out the way it played out, and I'm just happy to be back with the guys, man, and having the chance to play this week, you know what I mean? And that.
Yeah, well, he faced being the first player to be suspended under these new rules for violating the hip drop tackle rule too many times. Even though that suspension was overturned, people know about Frankie Louvu, and they will probably, the referees will be on the extra lookout for him and the violation of that rule.
Obviously, they got a target on my back, you know what I mean? I'm under a microscope. I'm working on it. I'm trying to be better at it every day.
I was going to ask you, do you feel like you're almost being picked on a little bit with this?
I mean, I don't know what it is, you know what I mean? Like, I go out there every Sunday trying to play and help my team win. That's like the main goal for me. But I feel like that's the feeling I feel like I'm under a microscope. And, on my part, what I can control is just go out there and make my tackles and not make it seem and leave it up to their hands where it's, it's another fine or it's another thing where I'm trying to appeal, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
You mentioned you like to play physical, you like to play fast. So does this impact of how you maybe approach the game or how you try to tackle during a game now?
No, it don't change nothing on what I bring to the table. Like, I'm going to still play my game. I'm going to still play fast. I'm going to be aggressive and be physical. Like, that's what we preach. And that's what got me this far, you know what I mean? And I'm going to leave it up to the league to, figure out what they see in the plays that I make. And like I said, I play it one way, and that's the only way I know how to play. And that's fast, physical, and downhill. You
mentioned your reputation. Yeah. Something like this, does that concern you? Like, it hurts your reputation in a sense?
I mean, man, it do, because, everything I work for is kind of out there, you know what I mean? It's publicly out there, and, like, to me and to all my families, and like they're seeing that, you know what I mean? And also my peers is looking towards me and kind of like, oh, we don't respect Frankie Lucas, he's a dirty, and all those lines or whatever the headline.
Right, people thinking you're a dirty player.
Yeah, the headlines may be, but, you know what I mean? My teammates know who I am. The people that know me and the people that around me know who I am as a player, as a person. And none of my intentions are trying to get out there and trying to hurt somebody. You know what I mean? And I try to play the right game, the right way, and control what I can control. You know what I mean? I can control what other people think about it. And whoever leaves it up to their hands to make a decision if I got to play or not play.
Well, human nature is that the referees will be looking, I think, extra carefully at Frankie Louvu, but Louvu on the field on Sunday when they play the Detroit Lions. This is interesting. Mike Vrabel, who kind of in some ways is this year's Dan Quinn, right? I mean, he took over a New England team that was a mess, and he had been fired in Tennessee. He didn't take Tennessee to the Super Bowl in the way that Dan Quinn took Atlanta to the Super Bowl, but for whatever reason, time ran out for him in Tennessee. He winds up back with his old team, the New England Patriots, and they're having a hell of a year. They're 7-2, and they are in a position that Washington was in last year that, could you add some veteran players at the trade deadline that could help you get over the hump and maybe make a run at the Super Bowl? They made the deal for Marshawn Lattimore, which in the rearview mirror looks like a disaster, but I didn't fault them for making the move at the time. It seemed like the right thing to do. But Vrabel was asked why New England didn't make any trades before the 4 o'clock deadline on Tuesday. And he said, well, first I should say that deals are like pregnant. You either are or you aren't. There's no it's either a deal or it's not. So I don't know how close you can be. And then he said, I know that everyone worked hard and we investigated and looked in and made phone calls and did what personnel departments do. In the end, we decided that this is what we're going to do. Seems to me you can be close to a deal and not make a deal. I don't think the pregnancy analogy works. Again, you're either pregnant or you're not. New England did end up sending safety Kyle Duggar to the Steelers and edge rusher Keon White to the 49ers just prior to the deadline. So they did make a couple of deals. But at 7-2, they are right on top of the AFC East with a big game coming up on Sunday in Tampa against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, we have a quarterback there who's been discarded by 3 teams before coming there and resuscitating his career. And you also have Sam Darnold, who is and the odd thing about Darnold is this. Darnold obviously washed out with the Jets. He went to Carolina. That didn't work out. And then he winds up last year in Minnesota. And without what happened at the end of the year, maybe he still wouldn't be in Minnesota. They were going to go with J.J. McCarthy no matter what because they drafted him in the first round. But, is it possible that Sam Darnold might have been picked up for another year or two in Minnesota to make a run at the Super Bowl or paid an enormous amount of money by somebody else to be their quarterback? He did wind up in Seattle. That Geno Smith went with his old coach and is now he's going to play tonight. He's going to play tonight for the Raiders and Pete Carroll. But they went out and they got Sam Darnold, and he's in the discussion. He couldn't have played much better. Whatever you want to say about the defense for Washington, he was spectacular on Sunday night. And this gets to the discussion that Mel Kiper had on our morning show yesterday on Sportsmanlike about quarterbacks who just don't happen to wind up in the right place. And if they go to the right team, how different things look for their careers.
For Seattle and Darnold, first of all, Darnold, Baker, come on. You had your quarterback, Cleveland. You had your quarterback. But I understand in Daniels, it didn't work, and it was never going to work. I get that right. It was never going to work there, Mel. But you had the guy. Make it work. Okay, who the hell's fault is it if you didn't make it work?
That's a great point,
I mean, it makes no sense to me how these teams, but it wouldn't have worked there. Well, okay, wouldn't have worked there. You had a heck of a young quarterback, and you just cut him loose, and it didn't work there. Well, I always say organizations, guys, and Michelle, ruin quarterbacks. 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, these quarterbacks come in with enormous talent. They got a chance to be really good, and they're ruined by the organization. And we see that time and again. Sure, there's going to be guys that just are busts and didn't have it or what it took and could have been at 5 different places and wouldn't have made it. There are those kind of guys, but 8, 9 times out of 10, organizations ruin these young quarterbacks.
Mel, which one bothers you the most? Which quarterback out there that you evaluated at the collegiate level that you thought had all the talent in the world got ruined by an organization? Which one still bothers you?
I think to me that I'm looking at what happened in Cleveland with Baker right now, but going back in time, that's a tough one, Michelle, because again, and I'm not going to. I think like I love Jimmy Clausen coming out. Jimmy Clausen could have probably played 6 different places. Wouldn't matter. He moved around. It didn't matter. He was not what I thought he would be. Okay, so you have guys like that. I think Will Levis was ruined by Tennessee. And I think that happened there. And we'll see if what happens down the road. He played with an injured shoulder. Nobody brought that up last year. They bring it up with Joe Flacco now, right? But they didn't bring it up. He played through that. He went from a coordinator and a head coach in Vrabel and Kelly that were really improving him, and he looked pretty good as a rookie. He went into a second year looking like the guy. And then he made a couple mistakes early. They got down to you overreact to that. You'll make him lose his confidence. The team didn't believe in him. Then he gets hurt, and it's all over. So I think, to give you an example of a guy I liked, that the league necessarily didn't, as much as I did, that I think was ruined by an organization or by a former coach, if you want to say that. It was Will Levis in Tennessee.
So Will Levis could wind up being the next Sam Darnold or the next Baker Mayfield. We'll have to see. But I think that's a legitimate point about where a quarterback winds up and how his career unfolds. And the old school one, and I've heard Roger Staubach say this, is Roger Staubach looked at the career of Archie Manning. And Archie came along, I think, it was a few years later than, quite a few years later. It was like five years later than Roger Staubach. But because of Staubach's naval commitment, whereas 5 years after he finished up at the Naval Academy, he doesn't become a rookie in the NFL until about the same time that Archie came in. I think Archie's rookie year was 71, and it was 1970 for Staubach. He didn't start right away. He played behind Craig Morton. And was actually a backup to Morton in a Super Bowl, believe it or not. And so he looked at his career in Dallas, Hall of Fame career, and Archie's career in New Orleans, where he may have been the most sacked quarterback of all time. They just didn't keep track of sacks until 82. And said, if we're reversed, if Archie winds up with the Cowboys and I wind up with New Orleans, maybe our careers, are just like each other's. I don't know. I think Staubach was that good. He would have elevated the Saints, I think, a little more than Archie, but Archie could run too. So that's, sometimes how those things work out for them. And fortunately for Jayden Daniels, I think he's wound up with the right organization. If he came here a few years earlier under the Dan Snyder ownership, who knows what would happen. I always stop short of the Robert Griffin III comparisons because Griffin did that to himself. The narrative about the injuries ending his career, not so. And some of the injuries were his own fault for not protecting himself. So it's a different situation. But, yes, timing is everything. And if you wind up in the right place at the right time, who knows what can happen. I'll tell you about the Jimmy Clausen thing if you don't remember. This is 15 years ago. Time really flies. But this was 2010. Clausen was coming out of Notre Dame. In terms of wins and losses, big disappointment. He showed up as a freshman in a limousine talking about winning 3 or 4 national titles. They didn't come close. They were awful under Charlie Weiss. And Mel said, this guy is the best quarterback in the draft. And he said, if he doesn't have a successful career, I'll retire. Well, he didn't have a successful career. Mel offered to retire. They said, no, you can't retire. So he didn't. But, that was a miss on Jimmy Clausen. Let's see. The other one that he's talked about is Andre Ware. Andre Ware coming out of the University of Houston, I think it was 1990, and he had played in this run-and-shoot offense in Houston. Jack Pardee was the coach. Even though Pardee was a defensive guy, he had this run-and-shoot offense where they scored a hell of a lot of points with them. But they were also running that in Detroit, where he went there and was going to be Barry Sanders' quarterback. And Mel thought that was a perfect fit. Indoor stadium, a quarterback who could run. The way that they ran their offense was similar. He said he fit like a glove. Turned out Andre Ware wasn't that good. You miss. It's an inexact science. And that's one of those that he said, that one I really should have seen, and I just didn't. I just missed on that one. All right, that's enough for me. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.